Hello everybody, welcome back. Gerald here with your weather forecast. We have a lot to break down in today's video, including that ongoing severe weather threat here into the southeast and even into the mid-Atlantic tomorrow. This has already produced tornadoes and damaging tornadoes in Texas today, and that will shift to the east. On the flip side of this storm that we are dealing with, massive winter storm and strong winter storm conditions, including up to a foot of snow in areas of Arkansas going into tonight. That snow will shift to the north and east going into tomorrow. We're going to break all of that down in today's video, including what I think will be a pretty big shot of Arctic air bringing its way into the lower 48 to round out January and to start February. So, if you're new here, welcome. My name is Gerald. I'm a meteorology major at the University of North Carolina, Charlotte, and I hope you enjoy the video. Hopefully you learned something. If you do, make sure to like it, comment, tell me where you're watching from, and go ahead and subscribe because we're getting very close to 1,000 subscribers here. We've already hit 700, just did that this morning. Which is super exciting, and I want you to be a part of this growth as we enter into the end of January and start February with this very active weather pattern. All right, with that said, let's go ahead and dive right into it because we do have a lot to talk about. So looking at radar, you can already see this very dynamic storm we are dealing with here into the south central plains, and as we get into the overnight, that is going to work its way up through the Ohio River Valley and into the northeast. You can also see this very well here on our satellite imagery here, where you see these very bright colors indicating those strong storms, getting going here into sections of Texas, Louisiana, and eventually, as we get into the overnight, Dixie Alley also getting in on some of that severe weather. On the northern side of this low pressure here, we're getting heavy snow to break out. We've already had some places of Texas past 10 inches of snow today from this system, and that will continue as we get into the overnight, and we're going to have some pretty impressive snow totals here out of this storm, even for areas pretty far south. Up here into northwestern Arkansas, I think it's going to be a real bullseye with this system, getting close to a foot of snow in places there into northwestern Arkansas. All right, taking a look at our current hazards, you can see this map is very colorful today with this system here over Texas, having this large swath of those winter weather advisories and winter storm warnings stretching all the way from Texas to Maine without skipping anyone, all the way from Oklahoma City through St. Louis, Indianapolis, up through northwestern Ohio, and then also up into New England having these warnings in place. Also, with this system being so powerful, we have all of these winter weather, those wind advisories, I should say, here into the southeast, with the storm kicking up that wind, bringing those windy conditions, and of course, tornado watch currently into southeastern Texas, and I expect more of these watches to be issued into the overnight into sections of Louisiana, Mississippi, and potentially even southern Alabama and the Florida Panhandle. So, talking a little bit about this winter weather threat here, these are where we expect those impacts. Here's your key at the bottom to see how extreme those impacts will be for where you live. But nonetheless, a large swath of the country here getting in on at least these moderate impacts, and even isolated areas getting in on those major impacts out of this system from those winter storm conditions, including that heavy snowfall that we will talk about here. So let's go ahead and look at tonight's temperatures. This is where we will have that snow here to the northern part of this low where you see these freezing temperatures, but on the south side where you see this warm sector of air, that's where we will be dealing with those severe storms into the overnight, beginning to push into Louisiana, southern Mississippi, Alabama, the Florida Panhandle getting in on some of those severe storms into the overnight. Looking at tomorrow's high temperatures, again, we'll have to watch for that warm sector here to the southeast and portions of the mid-Atlantic producing some severe storms again tomorrow. And then also those colder temperatures to the north producing that snowfall tomorrow afternoon. All right, so going ahead and breaking this down, this is a pretty good depiction of what current radar looks like, having those storms pushing into Louisiana and that heavy snow breaking out into sections of Oklahoma and northwestern Arkansas. As we take this into the overnight hours, you can see that line of storms continues to work through sections of Louisiana and Mississippi, getting to the New Orleans area right before midnight tonight. And why that is ongoing, heavy snow continuing here into sections of Arkansas, southern Missouri, eastern Oklahoma, before eventually here into the south central plains. we begin to clear out as we get into sunrise tomorrow. But just because we're clearing out here doesn't mean that other sections of the country are clearing out. While this is clearing out of the south central plains, it'll just get going here into sections of the Midwest. You can see as we get into tonight, that band of snow breaking out here into sections of southern Missouri, northern Arkansas, and this is where I think we're going to see some of those highest totals is right into here, seeing some places likely getting close to a foot of snow with more widespread 6 to 12 inches or 8 to 10 inches, more of a defined number there for you. So as we get into about midnight here, you can see that heavy snow continuing here into sections of Arkansas, snow breaking out into St. Louis, southern Illinois, even southern Indiana, potentially seeing some snow out of this system. And then as we get into sunrise tomorrow, you see that system pushes up more into the Ohio River Valley, finally clearing out into the Arkansas or northern Arkansas sections of this storm, but that heavy snow now getting going here into a place like Indianapolis, sections of Ohio, heavy snow into areas of St. Louis, especially the south side of St. Louis. I think really getting a good amount of snow out of this system. And then we still have to talk about this rain here also on the southeastern side of this system. So while we're having snow on the north and western side, we have that rain ongoing here throughout Tennessee, Kentucky, and then areas further south that we'll talk about here in a second. So as we get into tomorrow afternoon here, that shield of snow begins to push further into the northeast, and we begin to clear out here on the backside of the system through St. Louis, finally clearing out by tomorrow afternoon. Paducah, Kentucky, Memphis being pretty clear by the time we get into tomorrow afternoon, but still that heavy snow ongoing here into northwestern Ohio, the Detroit area, also seeing that snow. Before by the time we get into tomorrow evening around sunset, we really begin to clear out here, and that's whenever we could get some backside snow showers and rain showers potentially going into the overnight tomorrow. But the worst of the system will be done by then, just left over snow and rain showers going into your overnight Wednesday and into your Thursday morning. All right, so the severe weather threat tomorrow continues here into the southeast and mid-Atlantic. You can see we have that threat area lined up here through the Carolina coast, down towards Tallahassee, Macon, also being in the severe weather threat. And this includes the risk of tornadoes tomorrow. So looking at this here, we have that chance highest here from Myrtle Beach up through Wilmington into the Outer Banks. Also another area highlighted here right around Tallahassee, but all areas in between under this threat for those tornadoes tomorrow. But I really think the biggest threat out of this will be that damaging wind threat. You see all of the Carolina coastline, Georgia coastline here into the Florida Panhandle, having that threat for damaging winds tomorrow outlined there in that yellow shaded coloring there by our Storm Prediction Center issuing these warnings for us. So taking a look at radar for the southeast tomorrow, this is for midnight tonight. This is whenever we'll have that line of storms beginning to push through sections of New Orleans, eastern Mississippi, and finally getting into the Alabama area. The northern side of this should just be good old-fashioned rain, maybe some rumbles of thunder, mixed in there, but that biggest severe threat will be lined up right here along the Gulf Coast going into tonight. So let's time that out for you here. As we get into still the overnight here, that line of storms begins to move through Mobile around the really early hours of the morning from 3 to 6 a.m. Through Tallahassee as well, right around sunrise. And that's whenever we'll see this rain shield get going up here into Atlanta, Greenville, Spartanburg, Asheville seeing some rain tomorrow morning. Real washout for tomorrow's commute, including the Charlotte metro. But once we get into tomorrow afternoon here, this is whenever we'll have to watch for those severe storms here. We'll be able to get enough of that sunshine potentially mixed in with those clouds, as well as that warm air being lifted northward to help produce some severe storms here along the coastal areas of the southeast, before eventually clearing out by the time we get into sunset tomorrow. Much clearer conditions throughout the southeast, although some lingering showers, especially down into Florida from Orlando, down through Tampa, Fort Myers, and then eventually into Miami through the overnight tomorrow. Okay, so looking at that tornado potential specifically here, as we get into about midnight tonight here, you can see that line of storms helping to produce those tornadic ingredients here right along the Gulf Coast for areas of Mobile, Biloxi, Mississippi. And then as we get into sunrise tomorrow, you see that threat shifts over towards the Tallahassee area before eventually getting into tomorrow afternoon. You see those ingredients spike up a little bit here along the Carolina coastline, and that's whenever we'll be watching for that tornado threat there going into tomorrow afternoon before those ingredients die down going into tomorrow night. Okay, taking a look at the Mid-Atlantic now with this storm also going to impact us here as well. We've had a clear day here across the Mid-Atlantic. That changes going into tomorrow, going into about 6 a.m. tomorrow, right around sunrise. You see that rain breaking out here for us along the Appalachian Mountains, although we could start as some snow or ice here into the mountains of West Virginia and Virginia tomorrow morning before quickly changing over to rain as we get into the afternoon. You see that here as we get into the afternoon. This snow here that will try to hang on here into sections of western Maryland, northwestern Virginia, eastern West Virginia, will begin to change over to rain, and we'll see all rain for places like D.C. throughout the state of Virginia once we get into tomorrow around noon to 2 p.m. That snow line will begin to move northward as this low pushes north, and including tomorrow evening rain for Philadelphia through Delaware, New Jersey, getting a lot of rain out of this, especially the southern half of New Jersey. May start as a quick burst of snow there into northern Jersey. But once we get into sunset tomorrow, that's whenever things should begin to improve here into the Mid-Atlantic. Most of that heavy moisture clearing off the coastline by about 6 o'clock tomorrow. Still some leftover showers, though, on the backside here, especially into Virginia, Maryland, Pennsylvania. But once we get closer towards midnight tomorrow night, much clearer conditions, and we'll watch for some of that northwest flow to potentially bring some of these snow showers in on the backside before having a much more pleasant Thursday afternoon here into the Mid-Atlantic. Again, just watching for some of those back-end snow showers here into the Appalachian chain and into kind of the bluegrass area of Kentucky there, Ohio, and Indiana. Okay, moving on here into that severe weather threat, a bit more in-depth here with the Mid-Atlantic. I did want to show this. We do have those tornado parameters stretching all the way up towards Virginia into tomorrow afternoon. So we'll watch these entire areas here along the southeastern coast. I think really from Virginia Beach down through kind of the Savannah area having those greatest chances of that severe weather. All right, taking a look at the Northeast here. Northeast is really going to be split in half here between heavy wet snow and heavy wet rain. So looking at that here, as we get into tomorrow afternoon here in the Northeast, that's when things really ramp up. The shield of snow working its way into the interior Northeast. Could start as snow here into sections of northern New Jersey, into sections of northeastern Pennsylvania, but likely a lot of those areas changing over to rain by the time we get into tomorrow evening. But that's whenever the snow will pick up here into ski country, as well as starting off with some snow here into the Boston metro area. But that will also change to rain in Boston, but we'll hold on to that heavy wet snow here throughout Vermont, New Hampshire, Maine, upstate New York, seeing some of that heavy snow as well. And that continues into the overnight Wednesday into Thursday morning here. You can see the storm finally beginning to work out of the region. By the time we get into Thursday afternoon and late morning, just some leftover snow showers here for us, but much clearer weather. Okay, so how much snow are we talking total here with this system? See a swath here of that heavy snow all the way from northwestern Arkansas, as we've been talking about, through St. Louis, Indianapolis, northwestern Ohio, and then up here into the ski country of New England, seeing some of these highest totals. Pretty widespread, 3 to 5 inches throughout this section of the storm, but isolated areas here, 5 to 8, I think, through Indiana, up through northwestern Ohio, through Detroit. But again, a bullseye here into southern Missouri, northwestern Arkansas. I think 8 to 12 inches is a lot more likely, and I wouldn't be surprised to see someone get over a foot of snow there, especially into the Ozarks of southern Missouri and northern Arkansas. And then up here into the higher terrains of ski country, half a foot to a foot of snow to work with here with this storm. Okay, so talking briefly about after this storm, once we get through it here, going into our Thursday and Friday, behind it we will likely have a bit of a moderate period of weather, but going into the middle of next week, I think we get a brutal Arctic blast back into the lower 48, somewhat reminiscing or reminiscent of that Christmas Arctic blast we had, although I think this one will be a bit more confined to the northern plains, but could reach the east later on going into early February. So, timing this out real quick. Going into this weekend, I think we get a bit of a clipper system trying to move in from Canada into the northeast. Don't expect major impacts with that, but here as we get into late this weekend, into the beginning part of next week, we're likely going to get this cold front to begin to dive down into the lower 48, producing another storm system that we'll worry about later on once we get through the one we're already dealing with. But what's going to be behind that storm system is going to be bitterly cold air here, especially into the Midwest and northern plains. But we'll see if that cold air can try to work its way into the eastern half of the country. So how cold are we talking here? Real quick, I will talk about later this week. Once we get past this storm we're dealing with right now, a brief cool down here with these blue colors that you see in the east, before likely getting another warm up as this cold front kind of weakens going into the middle part of this weekend, before on the backside of this, watch these brutally cold temperatures here working their way down into the northern plains from Canada. As we get into the latter half of this weekend here, you see this very sharp gradient of temperatures with this cold front trying to push south and east into the United States. Temperatures could be 40 degrees below what they should be this time of year, and whenever you're already in late January and you add 40 degrees colder than what it should be in late January, that definitely spells trouble for us here into the Great Plains, before eventually I think this cold front kind of stalls as it runs into the southeast ridge, trying to bring warm weather into the southeast. And where we get this fight here between these two is where we're likely going to get storm tracks to continue to work their way through the country. So likely going to have a lot of what we're dealing with right now through the end of January, more rounds of storms to come, before eventually we will see if going into the start of February, this cold air can finally beat down that southeast ridge and work into the eastern half of the country. So Climate Prediction Center here agrees with that super cold weather into the 8 to 14 day time frame. So starting off the beginning of February here with well below average temperatures, and then that big question mark is how far back can this cold air push that southeast ridge. But what I will tell you is here in between these two, that's where we're likely going to get continued low pressures to track through and produce more snow here on the north and northwestern side of those low pressures, and severe weather on the southeastern side. So where these two boundaries collide, that's where we need to watch going into February. So again, the potential for some snow here in these blue areas that kind of border this red, but we'll also have to watch where this boundary sets up going into early February, because what we do know is where that boundary sets up, we will have that above average precipitation here depicted by those green colors going into the start of February. So that is all I have for today's video. Again, if you liked it, go ahead and hit that like button, and I would love for you to subscribe and join us here on this channel. And make sure to share it with your friends and family here, especially into the southeast tonight, where we have that severe weather threat, and going into tomorrow, as well as those winter storm impacts on the northern side of this storm. But with that said, stay safe, stay warm, and I hope you all have a wonderful night, and I will see you all tomorrow.